So, welcome to Postwave.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hello.
What's up?
So you're here with Eric and Trevor, your hosts, and today we've got some special guests on. We have Luke Collier and Richard Franklin from EdBoard.
Hello.
Happy to be here.
So Luke and Richard, y'all are both based in Colorado?
Yeah. Still in Colorado, still in the sort of the Boulder area.
Mm-hmm.
So you both went to CU as well.
Yeah, CU Boulder.
That's correct. Yep.
Wonderful.
What year did y'all graduate?
This year.
This year?
Well, this year and last year, right? I mean, my senior year, I wanted to graduate with my senior class, and we just finished a big project. Wanted to celebrate with them. So I graduated. I walked in graduation with them, and then I pieced out to Spain for a semester to wrap up some of my humanities classes and retake physics, because I needed to retake physics, and hey, why not do it in Spain?
Yeah, awesome.
I wasn't going to go back to CU, but then I did because of these awesome business classes that I had this opportunity to take with EdBoard, and it was basically like a new venture prep class. So EdBoard is the company that I was brought into, and I dragged Richard in, and he's like loving it.
Yeah, and the class was, well, I wasn't in the class because it conflicted with my schedule, but it was a super cool, it was kind of an accelerator, if you know about like business accelerators, but in like a class, like a semester class, and there was judging and prizes and, well, cash prizes. It was super cool.
That's awesome. So this kind of brings us into a question we wanted to ask you guys, which was, how did you get involved in your fields, in your majors?
Yeah. So my background is I'm what they call a strategic communications major, which is basically the art of communicating to a targeted group of individuals. So that's like advertising, PR, media design, business communication. It's like marketing, but minus all like the math and projections.
Just the fun part.
Well, yeah, it's basically like the best way I can describe it is like watch Mad Men and take away like the alcoholism and the depravity.
Hey, no, the fun part is math, man.
Well, that's why you got into engineering, right?
That's why he's an engineer. yeah, and I got involved with that because like when I was a kid, I can remember when I was a kid watching TV and realizing that like, wait, all the ads are created. Like people had to make a decision, right? They had to pick those words. And I remember as a kid, that was like, I was really fascinated by that. Like that idea of like, holy crap, like that was a choice. Somebody decided to like use like words like, it really works. New and improved, right?
Yeah. So how does your understanding of human psychology play into that? Are you just constantly trying to like mind read people?
Oh, totally. Totally. You're like, that's what they train you at school is like, get involved in the conversation, go beyond the surface. So I originally wanted to be a psych major, and then basically college psychology only throws you down two paths. One is like become a therapist, and the other one's like do research. And I'm like, I don't really like to do both. But then, Luke took me. Again, Luke always plays a pivotal moment in many moments of my life.
Oh,
Took me to this awesome like meeting that this guy did at like Longmont Startup Week, and he gave this whole conversation of like behavioral economics, and he was talking about like they put milk behind at the back of the store because they want to get people to go deeper into the store when they buy. So what are the two common items people buy when they go to the store? Milk and eggs, right? I remember thinking like, oh, that's super cool and awesome. And then, I was looking around at programs at CU. I was at Front Range getting a general associate's degree, and I'm like, strategic communication. They were talking about like understanding how people think, and I'm like, oh, this is just the business application of psychology. This is what I wanted to get into. And then, a couple years later, you come out with a Bachelor of Science, even though every teacher I had said advertising is an art, not a science.
I mean, now with like machine learning, though, you can turn it into a bit of a science.
To a degree, but like people like everybody works differently, and you can't really throw like people in groups, even though everybody tries, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's never perfect.
So how about you, Luke? How did you get into your background?
Yeah, I mean, basically, ever since I was a young kid, I mean, obviously all kids play with toys, right? But my neighbor happened to own this company that made toys. It's called Zomtool, and it's basically like this geometric toy. I remember going down to the factory, when I was a young kid, and watching all the machines run and all that. I thought that was so cool. My dad was a mechanical engineer. I was part of the robotics team back in high school. All the while I was like building, giant Zome sculptures for my neighbor. Yeah, first robotics really gave me like an insight into how to work in a team. As I did 2 years as a software developer and then 2 years as a mechanical designer. Yeah, it just kept going from there.
Do you feel like there's a moment of clarity in your past where you decided, yes, this is what I'm going to do, or did it just sort of get laid out for you?
There was a
I know, it's like there were many moments.
There were many moments of clarity, many moments of disclarity. What's the opposite of clarity? Confusion. Obscurity, yeah. And no, I've always wanted to be an engineer. Oh, right now, I'm being like a summer camp instructor, and I like to teach, but the kids kind of annoy me, and American jobs in teaching just unfortunately don't pay that well.
Mm-hmm. Leave it to America to undervalue education.
Mm-hmm. So I didn't know whether I wanted to be in like an art major or like because I'm always big into like art installations and like being like a Burning Man artist, right? Or
cool.
Yeah, I mean there's all kinds of stuff you can do with that, and like what kind of different path in this general funnel. At least I'm somewhere in the funnel. It may not be. Maybe like more near the top of the funnel, but at least I'm in a funnel, so we'll see where it goes.
You're just spiraling deeper and deeper into like the artist, like.
And then after it comes out of the funnel, right, it just like spatters out again.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Me and Trevor, we were talking about our own motivations in getting into music in our first episode.
Mm-hmm.
And that maybe the reasons we got into it were not entirely honest with ourselves, at least in our own cases, and that you kind of go through the funnel, and once you get out the other side, then you finally have the time to reflect and say, wait, is that really what I wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, for me it was kind of I came right out of music school, and I kind of, took the first job that I could get, which was playing piano for ballet classes like 18 hours a week. I was like, yeah, I can, this is like a almost full-time job. And but I took it because it was there, and I didn't go into music school thinking that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
I remember having like this guy come and give a speech to one of my like classes like first year at CU. I think he was like the head of marketing at like Chipotle or something, like some big guy, and he gave this whole speech about like, you know, that time when you do that thing and like hours and days turned like into minutes and you're like, wait, what the hell, the sun was up a minute ago? He's like, that's your body telling you that that's what you want to do and you should follow doing that. And I'm like, that's a cool thing for a guy to say to come to a class. Like usually when like speakers come to class, it's like, you know, super boring or generic. But I was like, that kind of describes what it's like when you want, like, did you guys like think of like, I'm just going to become a musician for the money? Or like, no musician ever says that realistically. Nobody's like, I'm going to get rich on music, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, it was more about, for me, it was more about like fulfilling potential. And if I hadn't gone down that path, not knowing what my potential would have been, that was more the mindset.
And for me, it was kind of a lack of a mindset. I think there wasn't so much forethought that went into it. I didn't go through the effort of coming to terms with what I really wanted from that. But it's cool because it sounds like both of you are really into what you're doing.
Which is great when you're working at a small startup.
Yeah, so tell us more about how you got involved with that. You said it was an actual class at CU that got you into the startup?
I mean, our founders, Cody, Ryan, Joy, and Ruhan, and was Wong in the class too?
Wong was the founder.
This was like their junior design class, right? And they have a series of topics, and the idea is that you have to create a product and create a business plan around it and like make the product, and it has to be something you can like physically achieve. So they came up with this idea. They were all like super passionate about like education, and they were like, you know, they're making this product, they're having, you know, they're doing the classwork, and they're like, holy crap, this is cool. And then they kind of just spun it into a business. And then they went through CU's accelerator, Catalyze CU, you know, got some great mentorship, got some money. I mean,
yeah, I was
involved with that.
Yeah, so I stepped in when they finished their junior design class. They presented. They got like pretty high up there in the ITLL like project expo.
They were like the people's choice, right?
They're people's choice. Was that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe the junior projects, like, you know, the person who gets first place, you know, that still might be like a project they never come back to. But these people were so involved that they ended up coming back to it again and again, and we recruited a lot of people who were just like so passionate about just education that they just wanted to share their passion for education and engineering and STEM. STEM and STEAM, which is STEAM is science, technology, engineering, art, and math, and STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. But I'm not sure whether we fall into a STEAM or STEM category. I guess we could save that for a different topic. But let's see. That is a topic. But what was I going to say? So I came in during the Catalyze CU program, and it's basically like this program where they got a bunch of free mentorship and, oh, by the way, free money to help start your business. But they ended up not taking any of the money personally and just investing it into business savings. And well, that's kind of what we're spending now with all of our advertising money and the materials budget and all of that. And so I've been mostly manning the prototyping and developing the product, making it easier to use,
and then
finding faster, easier ways to manufacture it.
And I've been doing the marketing and advertising stuff. Yeah, I came into EdBoard last summer as a junior, soon to be senior, and I'm like scratching my head of like, well, they need experience, like employers want experience. And then Luke came to me and it's like, well, I'm working at this startup and they're always looking for people. And so I joined them and I'm like, this is way better than any internship. And, you know, I don't say I have an engineering background, but like I come from, like on my dad's side of the family, I come from a very engineering family. My grandfather taught electrical engineering at Stanford for like 40 years.
He wrote the book on electronic controls, right? Or what was
his
that?
primary work was on control theory.
Control theory. And then your great-great-great-great-great-great-granduncle took a key to lightning, right?
Oh, you have to bring up that.
Yes.
You have to bring up that I'm related to a man on currency.
Wait, tell us about that.
I am related to Benjamin Franklin, if you couldn't tell by my last. He was like one of 17 kids, so that's not like a big.
Hey.
Well, you got to have a lot of people to work on the farm, right? So, like, yeah, even though I'm not an engineer, you know, I kind of understood the value of it coming from like such a highly educated family.
Definitely.
And like, it's funny, like the EdBoard is basically a breadboard, which is an engineering tool. But coming into EdBoard, I had no idea what a breadboard was.
Yeah, so Luke, can you tell us about what breadboards are?
What are breadboards? Well...
Let me explain a breadboard from a guy.
Okay, so
Luke.
An engineer explaining a breadboard versus a creative advertising guy explaining a breadboard. This will be interesting. So a breadboard is a tool that electrical engineers use that are basically a grid of sockets that are connected underneath that you can connect wires between the sockets to prototype electronics. So you stick a chip in like the middle of the breadboard, and not a corn chip, just an electronics chip. And you know, it could have 8 pins, 4 on each side, and you know, a bunch of wires connecting to it, and that's what the primary tool that electronics engineers and tinkerers and makers use to prototype their experiments.
Cool.
So for all you non-engineers in the audience, a breadboard is a tool used to plan and develop circuitry. Somebody like Steve Jobs or Steve Wozniak would have used a breadboard when developing the first Apple computers. Like, it is the basic tool. Like, that is, like, you know, what's the most, like, as a musician, like, as a metronome, like, a basic tool that, like, any musician would be, like, familiar with?
Yeah,
Better
hopefully.
hope so.
Right, so, like, so if you're an electric engineer, and you're working at, like, some big company, right? They expect you to know how to use a breadboard, right? Like, how, like, you're like, wait, you're a musician and you don't know what a metronome is?
It's kind of like a blank sheet of paper, isn't it?
A breadboard?
Yeah.
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 I like that metaphor.
It's the canvas in which engineers create electricity.
So tell us then, what is the EdBoard?
The EdBoard is it's a circuitry building tool that's designed to get kids like excited about STEM, and we chose, or at least our founders chose, circuitry as the main source of where they want to focus on STEM education, because they found that there isn't really a lot of circuitry tools for kids. And that's like the area of STEM that they thought would be the most impactful. One of the first things we teach about like electrical flow and all that. All of our circuitry stories take place in this town. You're supposed to like figure out how to like help the town. So there's like, the first thing we teach them is like, you're building a traffic light for this main street of the city for the festival. So we're teaching kids sort of the building blocks of technology while also showing them the applications for it.
That's cool.
Super cool.
Are you guys familiar with the book The Way Things Work by David McCauley and Neil Ardley?
Sounds like a book I'd be given.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I have it. I'm pulling it out right now. Yeah. Oh, my favorite. Oh, yeah. I remember this when I was a kid.
Right?
Yeah.
yeah.
Holy crap! I think I've seen that book before in my life too. Whoa, that is.
Oh God, I need to revisit this. Oh.
Not on the podcast though. We're paying good, or people are not paying. People are spending time to listen to us.
Yeah, by the way, people, like, comment, subscribe. Yeah. So the way things work, I thought about that the moment I heard about your project. This book was, this was just a book that I enjoyed a lot when I was a kid.
Oh yeah, me too.
I think a lot of people are more into STEM than they think. You know?
And the book follows a not a walrus, a mammoth.
Mammoths, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's story based. There's mammoths are integral, which is fun, and it's filled with all these fun little illustrations that help you understand the way things work.
Yeah, with EdBoard we use bugs.
Bugs.
Yeah,
oh, no.
They're called.
You
They're
might want to
cute.
iron that out.
They're cute bugs.
Iron out the bugs? Oh gosh, that's cruel.
Haven't you seen Bugs Life?
Eric's very sadistic. If y'all didn't know.
I take it you're Eric. You're not into bugs.
No. It was a technology pun.
With
Oh, a
EdBoard,
bug. Oh,
children
yeah.
Well, I mean,
Wow.
children do debug the problems in their circuits to learn more about them.
Uh-huh.
Did that really never occur to us? You found a bug in your circuit?
So I don't know about y'all, but when I was a kid, I had a couple of those like electronics kits with the springs that you put the wires in and connect stuff that way. How are y'all like trying to distinguish yourself from that kind of thing? Are you thinking about that?
Yeah, the cool thing we do too is we have magnets. So the idea is that you can see all the wires laid out.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see all the connections that your circuit has, and then you have these like wire pieces that you have, and you kind of put them in there. And playing with magnets is like intrinsically fun. And then the other fun thing too about it being magnetic is that you can build like buildings and stuff, and like have 3D circuits, which is super fun.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a fun building toy. We never even knew it could be a building toy. Take them
The other
individually.
cool-
Yeah. So.
Yeah, the other cool thing about EdBoard is like all the skills you learn on an EdBoard are like transferable to like tools an electrical engineer would do. Like a traditional breadboard. Like we got a paper published and we did some research, and it was like kids who were able to build a circuit on a EdBoard were able to build it on a breadboard, and like a breadboard's like 4 inches long and has like several hundred pegs, and just is like you look at it and you immediately have
Only
like
4
fear in
inches.
you.
Oh,
Only
no.
4.
It's okay.
It's not the size.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I wanna transition here and talk a little bit about Makerspaces.
Yeah, Makerspaces, man.
So, first question: what is a makerspace?
Makerspace? Right. I told you all the benefits of a university, but that's pretty much a lot of it's BS, because there's a lot of bureaucracy in universities. Makerspaces are more community-run workshops, so you can think of it as like a gym member pays for a gym membership, a monthly gym membership, to use all of the gym equipment that they would otherwise not have space to store in their house. But a makerspace is a place where people pay a membership to go use equipment that they would otherwise not have access to. This is more of a community-oriented space. So, yeah, people of all walks of life can come. Electrical engineers, artists, artisans, a lot of people can come to the makerspace that I typically go to is Tinkermill in Longmont. A lot of people come to Tinkermill and work on their mobile setup. So, they have a bus that they want to turn into, a traveling van, and they have a lot of fun doing it, and then they just head off to go travel some more. Yeah, there's so much you can do at a makerspace.
If you ever feel like a social outcast, go to a makerspace, and they always welcome you there.
Yeah, cool. I wanted to ask you guys. So what's the social landscape like there?
Yeah, so you have all these people who are passionate about making, and they all end up in makerspace together, and all different walks of life. There's even you got the entrepreneur who wants to spread his love and donate money to the donate.
He associates makerspace with a very specific geographical location.
Yeah. Yeah, but there are so many of them. Like, I was at the one in Madrid, and there's educators who want to teach kids. There are people who are just passionate about inventing their new product. There's artists who gamers. Yeah, exactly, gamers.
Both of the board and video kind.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like a hodgepodge of like all the cool people that you don't find elsewhere.
That's really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say the environment is kind of it's kind of diverse in that you have maybe supportive elements and cooperation, people cross-pollinating in their own different projects?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the analogy I would use is like, imagine being in like the 60s in like San Francisco when you have like the Grateful Dead and like Jefferson Airplane and they're all like jamming out together. Imagine that, but like technology.
All right. That's awesome.
What would y'all say you've learned about like cross-disciplinary collaboration with people who have come from very different skill sets and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so like when I was on my senior design team, right, we were all mechanical engineers, and we knew a little bit about other things, but all we could do is like produce like a really good mechanically engineered thing, and kind of schlep all the rest of the stuff under the rug and hope it looks pretty at Expo. But
you could market it.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, we didn't know what to do with it, and bless their hearts, they're still working on their project. But this cross-disciplinary team, like, we're able to network with so many different people on so many different walks of life that all had like advice and input onto how we should do our product. Working in a cross-disciplinary team, we get input from artists and electronic engineers and people who know about like how to do logistics and shipping and all of that, but they all want to share because a lot of maker culture supports the idea that information should be free, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
If you give out your knowledge and expertise, then you can have the liberty to ask for information and expertise and help on your project. So,
I mean, on the EdBoard team, we have members on our team who have like really good graphic design skills. Somebody on our team does like websites for like therapists. Another person on our team teaches drumline. Another person on our team is also like a business major too, and I'm a market. So it's like everybody on the team offers something, and in return we are reciprocated with support and being like, oh, thank God you're here.
That
like,
sounds nice.
That's like kind of the main, like that's like there's our moments where you do deal with like, holy crap, I'm over my head, but that's kind of the best part about it. And the good thing for us too is like we've been able to network with incredible mentors and support and like people who like, I have yet to show EdBoard to a single person who looks at that and goes, okay, I'll never take that whatever.
Well, there have been people who are like, oh, that looks kind of like XYZ, or
It's better than XYZ.
Yeah.
No, we have the same thing in music. Whenever you show off your music, like the worst thing that someone can say is, "Oh, that sounds like this other composer."
Have you ever heard so and so? Nah, that's. I mean, have you ever read the book The Creative Class
No.
No.
by a guy called Richard Florida? It was like a book I had to read for school, but he had this really interesting concept that like the main export in America is creativity.
Mm.
Like that's the main thing we as a country provide the world is our creativity. So if you look at so Apple makes the iPhone, right? How much does that cost to make overseas and how much do they sell it for, right? So what are you paying for? You're paying for that creativity,
Interesting.
right?
Yeah, someone had to have the idea.
Somebody had to have the idea like, well, what if I put a touchscreen on a phone and like all that multi-touch stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you're actually paying for when you buy a product. And the idea is that that's sort of where the American economy is going. We used to be like we used to be agricultural, like back in like the 1700s, right?
Sure. And maybe the trend, I've heard the theory as well that the trend might be shifting away from the United States as we are continuing to de-accentuate funding for education.
Oh, totally, right. We're going away from an economy and a society that builds things to a society that provides services, right?
Sure.
So I think, you can apply that to a makerspace, and that's like creative people go there. Same thing in music, right?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's kind of at the same concerts. You kind of see the same people if you start going out enough places, and you're all kind of in the mix together.
So the
Similar kind of
concert's
thing.
the gathering point of the musician, huh?
Yeah. And the makerspace is the gathering point of the dorks.
Hey, the engineers. Hey,
Shots
I'm a proud.
It took
I'm
an
proud to be a
engineer to
dork.
make your instrument.
Yeah.
I spent some time at the BTU lab
Yep.
at CU,
That's a cool place, right?
which is where I met Luke, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. I think that was back when the BTU lab was in the environmental design building too.
Yeah, when it first started out, and then it shifted to the Atlas.
Yeah.
Yeah, the media production people took that over to the second floor.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted to ask you. So you mentioned that there's some maybe bureaucracy involved with the school, and I wanted to ask you about how the makerspace within the school and the community there relates to the organization of the school as a whole.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the BTU lab is, let's see, they pride themselves on ingenuity, not doing like the norm. Theoretically, it's open 24/7. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, they're like, oh, we're closed and we can't have you swipe in, like go to other makerspaces. So that's kind of their part of being in the university, is that the organizers of the makerspace inside of the school still have to deal with that bureaucracy and having to, let that pass through. But there are a lot of like novel concepts that come out of it because of the creativity that's inspired there. You have special guests from all walks of life come in and give lectures on topics and do like meetings and hands-on workshops. It's a huge place for hands-on workshops, right? For like make your own XYZ, solder your own blinky circuit, sew your own. Oh, what was it? I do remember clearly. Cast your own duck, your wax ducky. Yeah.
What? I mean, isn't the other thing too about college is that you're just exposed to so many different like ways of thinking
Right.
in your life? Like you're never going to expose to like this amount of philosophy or this amount of art or like literature ever again in your life, right?
I don't know.
Oh.
I mean, not in that like short span of time,
No,
for
no,
sure.
like you're not gonna you're not gonna be like in a cafeteria and you're gonna strike a conversation. Some guy's like a physics guy with like a minor in philosophy, and you just get in this really like you're not exposed to like so many different stuff so quickly.
Yeah,
As
sure.
when you're in college. But like the other thing too is like college is cliquey, you know? There's not a lot of like cross-disciplinary like, you know, especially at CU, right? Because the engineering building is all the way across this, you know, campus from all the other stuff. Like all my classes were over in the environmental design building or over in some other building over there.
Yeah, that's actually another thing I wanted to ask you. So you've noticed maybe some cliqueiness and separation between the different disciplines. How does the university setting affect the social environment within a makerspace? Like, is there more stress, more competition, elitism?
Okay, so here's the thing. So CU, you know, they create a department that is right between the art building and the physics building, actually. And they put it there to call it the art and engineering building. And theoretically, you're supposed to have all these artists and engineers mix. But you know that department, you know, still wants to get its funding and all its stuff approved. So they're like, oh, you must be the Atlas student to use these resources. And there's our new category, and our art and engineering students that are combined into one category. And you're different than an art student, and you're different than an engineering student. I was never an Atlas student, and I'm sure Cody could speak more to this.
Or the EdBoard co-founder.
Our EdBoard, yeah, he's the CEO and co-founder. But yeah, like you create a new category that is art and engineering, and it's like, wait a second, don't we just want to like have them just co-pollinate always? No, it's now creating a new category, and that's something that probably differs like a school makerspace from a community-run makerspace.
Fascinating.
But they are trying to be better at being interdisciplinary and
Yeah.
getting more like they're building this bridge that connects the engineering building and the business building, and the idea is that the two will intermix more.
Right. And
Sounds expensive.
yeah.
Oh. If you want to, yeah, let's get
Universities
people to
are good
interact
at
more.
spending money on buildings.
Build a bridge.
Build a bridge.
I bet there's an entire department at CU which is like the Department of Building and Requisition of Land. The planning, like the Center for Planning and Building or something like that, right?
And so I was an engineering student. Thankfully, there were quite a few open houses and open like conferences that I could go to that, you know, would allow engineering students to, you know, mingle with music students. That's probably how Eric and I met, and the BTU lab was open to the whole campus, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how much you could speak to your experiences at the BTU lab, but
Yeah, I mean,
Or as a music student.
as a music student.
yeah, so I guess I got involved with Hunter Ewan, a professor at the music school. Trevor, we were students of Hunter's. Maybe in a moment, Trevor, you can talk a little bit about what it was like to do stuff with Hunter, because he's fucking awesome.
that was probably the most makerspacey stuff I ever did was with Hunter.
Yeah, absolutely. So my first introduction to the BTU lab was a class that Hunter Ewan taught, and it was supposedly getting art students and engineering students together collaborating on projects in the same room. Now, I think there were 2 music students and the rest was all engineers, which it was still a cool class, and it was cool to have that level of exposure of people who, if they didn't know what they were doing, at least they knew a little bit more what they were doing than I did.
Yeah. I think a reason why there's more engineering students than art students is I wonder why that is. Maybe I think engineering tends to be like a sort of tense up, do your math homework, do your calculus, like, and people just need a release, just like you know a class, just to get their creativity out. A lot of engineering students don't really get that opportunity.
I also think a lot of people go into engineering because they think it's a field that they'll make money in or that they'll bring them some level of prestige, right?
Right.
It's like how like parents, want their kids to be like doctors or like lawyers, right? I remember my grandma for years was like, you should learn computer science. They make a lot of money in computer science. And I'm like, but that's not what I want to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I was walking down the hallway. I think I just got out of an exam in mechanical engineering, and it's like, yeah, some of my peers are like, oh yeah, we're only in mechanical engineering because we don't understand the computer sciencey stuff, but obviously you want to go into computer science because it makes more money. And I'm like, oh wait, hold on, I got into this because I like to make things and invent things.
Yeah.
You're going to be way better in college if you're studying something you want to do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of relates to my own experience in college, where I felt like there was this immense pressure. You're spending a lot of money to prepare for your future, to be able to make more money when you're out in the real world. And there's so much pressure that there's no time really to stop and consider what you're doing and why, and if it's something that you really want to be doing.
Yeah, one of the cool things about, I felt like when all my advertising class, all my Stratcom classes, for the most part, I felt like the people in there chose it. Like they wanted to be there. Like we were also like a super new department. So there was also a lot of pressure from the school to like get your awesome internship and like make your mark and be awesome.
That's really cool.
Bring prestige to this newly developed program. But like it was super cool. Like I felt like all the students, like 90% of them, 80% of them wanted to be there. The other 20 are like, those people at college who are like there and you're like, why are you even here?
Well, they're there to party and socialize with other.
Oh, that reminds me of a really good story. I was walking from campus one night.
Were you on the hill?
I wasn't on the hill, but I was walking from the hill. So I was like kind of like I was on campus, and this guy's like a freshman. He was like commenting. I was wearing some jacket. He's like, cool jacket. I was asking like, what do you study? I'm like, I'm a business guy. And he asked me this. He was like, what are you? I'm a freshman. So like, can I ask you a question? So realistically, how many classes can I skip in a semester? And me being like a senior who's about to graduate, I'm like, don't. Treat this as a job. Show up to work, do your work. You're going to get way more of it. But he's like, yeah, but how many classes can I skip?
Yeah.
I mean, if it depends on the professor, like if they're counting attendance as your grade, or maybe they're not.
Or if you want to be there in the first place.
Yeah, there's always guys in colleges where you're like, what are you doing in college? It's like,
but there's people who can like get away with doing most of their like learning, like online. Just like do your homework, do your textbook, and the professor only cares if you turn in your homework, and
right.
Peace out.
That's so depressing to me, and it was extremely depressing when I was at school as well, especially when you calculate exactly how much money you're paying per minute of class time for your tuition.
What did it come out for you?
I forget, but it's something ridiculous, like
of course,
many dollars a minute.
I had a teacher once who he would often call out the student who was not paying attention and ask him a question. And I always thought it was rude, but I also kind of was like, thank you for doing that, for getting the guy who's like the least involved. Like, right. He was easily, like, he was watching, like, we'd be watching some clip some clip from some guy in some industry talking about like something, and then the teacher would immediately call up the guy who's on his phone going, they'd be like, so what did you think of the video? The guy's like, I thought it was cool. So then the guy's like, so what did you think about his statement about like giving more workers time off so they could work? And he was like, yeah, I thought it was a good and the teacher was like, okay, we're rewatching the video. Which is kind of a diva move, but I'm like, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I know there are times when I would just like, I'd take a class that I like really wanted to take and stuff. But then, halfway through the semester, I would just get like so phased, and it's like, wait, I thought I liked this, and I know I like this, but I'm like so just drained. Why? I don't know.
So you think the stress, the overload?
Yeah.
Leave it to the college to make interesting things not interesting.
Yeah, I feel like being in the music school is kind of a unique situation because obviously, like most people who are there are really passionate about music, but especially with the performance majors, they would a lot of them just wouldn't care that much about anything that wasn't playing their instrument. So like any kind of music history class or anything like that, you get some people who would kind of have the like just kind of do as little as possible to get by type of mindset.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, those music history classes, they're music history, but
hey, I'd love a music history
or like
class.
theory.
I had the most influential class I ever took, aside from Hunter Ewan's classes, which, Trevor, I want to hear about your experiences with Hunter. One of the most influential classes I ever took was a music history course at Conservatorium van Amsterdam.
Really?
Yeah, it kicked my butt. It was very challenging and involved, and it was just fascinating and really shaped my entire worldview.
I went to Amsterdam too.
Hey.
I remember the cool thing too about the Stratcom department at CU was like all the teachers were like super accomplished in their fields. Like my campaigns teacher, which is basically like the senior design capstone class, was like the brand manager at like Johnny Walker. The other teacher I had was like the junior partner at like one of the biggest ad agencies on the planet. The other one was like the brand manager at Lowe's. So what I got from my department was I didn't have very many academics as professors, but like people who worked in the field teaching me like how to work in the field.
Yeah,
which makes, I think, education so much more appealing and interesting.
Yeah, it's, adds a level of like culture almost to an otherwise run-of-the-mill topic. Like my dynamics professor, every now and then he would show like something, interesting, like a really cool application of the results of, his research and work and study. And that added to the class for sure.
Yeah, so I think I only had one class with Hunter as an actual teacher, which was an audio recording class. But the big kind of project thing I worked with him on over, I guess, about a year and a half was the Bison iPad ensemble, which was this group of 5 or 6 people, mostly composers, that we would use MaxMSP to basically turn iPads into different kinds of instruments. Either as like each person has the same instrument, or it's all one kind of big meta instrument that people are controlling different parts of. But I learned a lot from Hunter just about how to work on a project like that and problem solve and just kind of keep going no matter what. And yeah, we did a few like big like multimedia performances in Atlas, and yeah, the way he knew how to just orchestrate everything and all that was pretty inspiring.
For sure.
Yeah, my campaigns teacher, Michael Stoner, was like that too. He was like, the best way I could describe him is that he kind of was like that teacher who was there to like give people like, not to teach, but like to give them life advice. And like he was there because he wanted to be there.
Yeah, taking a very, very deep approach to everything and really thinking through the reasoning behind every decision. And yeah, really trying to examine things from every point of view.
Yeah, he taught me about the engineering process, the cycle of creation and the iterative process of the design cycle.
Yeah, design cycle, design thinking.
Yeah, Luke, do you want to talk a little bit about the design cycle?
Yeah, so basically, and I just got this really cool game. It's called Mockups. I mean, heck, we could throw some ideas out right here, and then we could talk about it.
All right,
so,
yeah, do a little design process live right now.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. All right. I got. Oh gosh.
Happening in real time, folks.
Adventurous preschoolers want a way to dispose of nuclear waste that is off the grid.
Wow.
Catapults.
So basically, the human-centered design process is you want to think about the customer that you're designing a solution for. So it gets you to think instead of, oh, how about this really cool thing that I want this like one like idea that just be like really cool and like, you know, my own little idea in my own head, instead of like thinking about putting your feet in someone else's shoes and what kind of product they would want. So we have adventurous preschoolers. I'm still trying to think of a scenario of why they would want a way to dispose of nuclear waste.
They live like downstream from like a Stillwater nuclear power plant.
I'm thinking about like the kids and the toys and the lead paint, you know. They could like chew on it and soak on it, and then they dispose of it by pooping it out maybe, or absorbing it.
All right. Good first iteration. Do we come into any design flaws with this?
I mean, you're either going to get superpowers or they're going to become like incredibly mutated, right?
Let's see. Something that's off the grid. So you have like these random design requirements like, oh, wait, why does it have to be off the grid? Oh, it's because we're going to go to rural places and deploy this solution. So, okay. We have to iterate on our design.
Maybe it's
right?
Post-apocalyptic and there's no grid.
Okay, so it's an adventurous preschooler in the setting of Fallout then. Well, we want to keep these adventurous preschoolers safe. You know, they could be like wandering off in the backyard and Daddy has a little special experiment in the backyard.
Oh dear.
That we want to keep them away from.
God.
So what do we need to do? We need to like develop like this sort of containment center that is childproof, right?
Can we throw the babies in like mini hazmat suits and give them a shovel?
Bro, yeah. Anyway, what we do next is we go and prototype this nuclear containment device at some place like a Makerspace. And okay, now that we have this nuclear containment device, you know, we can ask our local nuclear specialist So yeah, you make the prototype, iterate on it, and you have to find manufacturers that will build it or be the manufacturer. I don't know. Did Rodell manufacture these objects or?
Rodell was kind of just a giant consulting lobbying firm.
Oh, okay, yeah,
They were really like hush. They were like super hush hush about their whole like business operations, which
yeah. So
we found out that they were like a subsidiary of DuPont.
okay, yeah. So you have to find all these like subcontractors and manufacturers, and then you have to market it and all of that. And so that's what Richard's doing, is the marketing.
Yeah, and you have a kind of a diverse team of people doing different tasks, all working together on different stages of this design cycle.
Right. So yeah, I've been doing most of the prototyping lately because who knows if the school is open or what. But yeah, Tinkermill has still been open, and that's another cool thing is once you become a member, you have 24/7 access to it. So yeah, I mean, I've been doing most of the prototyping, refining sort of the manufacturing methods. How can we make this? How can we make it quicker?
Which I know nothing about.
Right. But he knows about like targeting ads to Facebook and all that mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, well, and so engineers and marketing aren't very common skill sets that cross over, because engineering's a very precise, accurate way of communicating, right, Luke?
Yes.
And marketing's like, okay, your transparent, integrated circuit building kit inspired by a breadboard is cool and all, but like, how do you get parents to look at that and go, I want it? My kid will benefit from it. They will, I want my kid, like, so what you do is you distill it to a universal truth. Some like, something like super, super granular. And you just and then you message that message simply, right? And you have to know who you're talking to, which involves a lot of like research and digging and a level of just like, I'm just going to stalk mom Facebook groups for a couple months and see what moms think right now, sort of things. And when you do enough of that, you're like, okay, this is what people want to hear. This is how we're going to say it. We're going to talk, we're not going to bring up certain words. We're going to focus on other things. We're going to talk about this awesome education tool that's going to teach your kid about technology, right? It's going to help your kid find their inner Tony Stark, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're a parent, that's immediately appealing, right?
Yeah.
So how do you tailor your music to different clients, different listeners, different what you tutor, right? So
yeah. So yeah, I mean, you really have to get a sense of what language people are speaking, like what they grew up around. Like I have one student who came in last week wanting to learn a piano arrangement of War Pigs by Black Sabbath, and then Love Will Tear Us Apart by Joy Division. And he just kind of like sprung those on me in the lesson. I was like, okay, let's. And he'd like worked on it a little bit.
And you were like, okay, how does that song go again? Dun,
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. Yeah, he had worked out a pretty good arrangement, but it was the thing he was wondering about is, like certain things are idiomatic on guitar, like especially with War Pigs, that it's hard to find an analog for them on piano, so that's kind of the problem. But then I have this other student who's like a 50-something-year-old math teacher who's really into classical music and jazz, and she even like Debussy is like a little bit out there for her. So I have to be aware of that.
Let's do Thelonious Monk instead.
Yeah.
Whoa! That came out in the last century.
Even
That's
monk.
still contemporary.
Hey! That Bach guy, he's new music.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's about knowing people's comfort level with different different languages and styles and yeah, you kind of have to meet them where they're at, because if you try to push them too much, at least at first, they're not gonna really take to it. And I imagine with advertising, you have to like immediately go like to right where they're at.
You have to know who you're talking to and what you're gonna say it.
Yeah.
And there's always this push from the people who aren't advertising people to want to say everything that they want to say. And you're like, no, like, how many have you ever seen a car ad and they tell you how the combustion engine makes them different from other combustion engines?
Mm-hmm.
No, right?
I have, but
right. But like most like car ads is like some really cool guy in a suit driving on some like mountain road or a guy in a voice going, "This is precision. This is the new Kia Altima
with a new V8."
With a new V8 only for 800, no APRD down, da 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 da. You know, it's like you ever know, like, I think the best example of like targeted ads are like Viagra ads. Right? It's always like some like, so it's always like some really like tough cowboy guy or like wrangling up his like horses, or it's some guy in a mechanic shop, right? It's like, you've been around the block a few times and you know when something's not working with your car. Right? You know that, yeah, you know sometimes the old girl doesn't perform like it does, but you still love, you're like, it's all this innuendo. So that's like the best example of advertising is usually when it's something a bit tableau.
So Trevor, so we talked a little bit about how we have to communicate in teaching, but then when it comes to actual musical expression in creating your own music, I think that is an entirely different landscape, because for me, genuine music, it's not targeted toward a particular audience that exists, right? It creates its own audience. It's a unique expression. You're saying, this is what I'm doing. You can like it, or you can hate it, or you can not give a fuck. But if enough people like it, then it becomes a thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you also have to be conscious of kind of what culture or what kind of school you're creating, because even if you think you're totally unique, you're still within some kind of larger group of people creating things. Sure. Who are likely also all kind of speaking the same language.
Yeah, that's true. But like I'm thinking about, like, for example, metal, and specifically metal with screaming. A lot of people hate screaming, and I think I actually have come to enjoy the sound of it. But it really puts a lot of people off, and it's kind of this statement that says, like, my purpose in creating this music is not to titillate your fancy. I'm not here to make you feel good so that you're gonna buy this thing or just feel good for whatever reason. I'm just expressing myself, and there's I think more value in music that expresses itself purely like that, as opposed to trying to tailor itself to a particular audience.
Totally.
I don't know about you, but me, I get eargasm every time I hear like a glitch music with just a bunch of weird music.
Yes.
It's just a bunch of weird sounds, and then boom, like harmony.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and people have like a very specific definition of what a genre is, or like what music is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there are people who's like, rap's not music, and you're like, it's to a beat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I listen to some hip hop that has some kind of retro sounding synth stuff, but it's not like purely electronic.
Mm-hmm.
Right, it doesn't sound like a Sega Genesis exploded.
Right. I kind of wanted to ask you guys, like, what keeps you motivated and inspired, and is there like one specific thing, or is it something like grand?
I think it's one of those things that you come in with different intentions, but you leave with other. Like, I approached the work at EdBoard as like, I need to get experience to get a job, but the more I'm working at it, I'm like, wait, this is better than most jobs. And then like the more you get to the different like the different benchmarks of success, the more you're like, how far can I push it? But with that comes responsibility, and you're like, okay, I built the plane. The plane is on the runway. I got to get it off the runway. You're in the air, and you're like, holy crap, I need to land it. I've never landed a plane before.
Yeah, there's some truth there. And also, you know, it'd be nice to get paid for doing it eventually, but you know, it's definitely a passion project for just wanting to get you know, a new educational tool into the hands of people who are less advantaged. That's one of my big motivations. I taught a summer camp once to a bunch of you know, disadvantaged kids in the I Have a Dream program. And that, you know, that was pretty rewarding just to see, you know, them like learn so much and, you know, grow from the experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's really.
And then, I don't know about you, but I learned a lot of things that college doesn't teach you.
Yeah, like how to interact with real companies, that's for sure.
How to get your product manufactured, like how to find a manufacturer and work within your budget, right?
Yeah, and we did a little bit of that for senior design, but, you know, it was mostly just for show. You know, a lot of people, you know, just wanted the grade, and that was the end for them, but, you know, there's so much more you could take it.
Yeah.
I mean, for you guys with music, did you have like a moment when you were like doing music outside of school where you're like, wait, school didn't prepare me for this?
Oh yeah, I mean, so I started playing in like blues bands like about I guess it would have been about 2 years ago exactly, a little more than that, and like all that, like learning songs on stage, and like I mean basically, you know, all the stuff by ear. Like classical training didn't prepare me for that a whole lot. It was very different.
Right, and like the logistics of being in a band, right?
Yeah, and it's way more free form, because like especially at you know, like conservatory style music school, a lot of the structure is provided for you, and you know there are certain ensembles and that you're put in, and you know people are kind of, you know, recruited to play your pieces a lot of the time. So yeah, it's way more loosey goosey outside the walls of the school.
Yeah.
I mean, you also, Eric, brought up the social aspect too.
Yeah.
I mean, I was involved in improv at CU, which is like, it's the closest to being in a band without being in a band. Because you're with a bunch of creative people. You have to like run the thing, and then because everybody's creative, there's always a level of divaism.
Yeah.
Or not diva, but like everybody's got their own
opinion for how the piece should go, right?
Right. And you're just going back and forth, and it gets really heated, but that's kind of the best part of the process, I'm finding.
Interesting. Yeah, that puts me in mind of a particular class I did with Hunter Ewan. So one day he decided, what would happen if we get the whole class, which was 11 dudes and 1 woman, and just have that kind of like aggressive, free form collaboration where everyone is trying to flesh out this project, and everyone kind of has their own ideas and wants to be heard and shape it the way they want. And for me personally, it was one of the most stressful hour and a half that I've ever lived. Cause
I know, right?
Yeah, it kind of felt like the space in the conversation was continuously pushed out as people were so intent upon getting their own voice to the top, and the volume in the room just continually kept rising. It is very it didn't feel, I don't know, we got stuff done. That's the thing. We did get stuff done. We came to decisions, but at the same time, the energy just was very uncomfortable, and it didn't feel like maybe the most optimal way to approach it.
Yeah, everyone's
Right.
compromising with everyone else on the creative direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was like when we were doing improv shows. We'd be like, no, the montage has to come after the Ron, but the Ron has to lead into the... And you're like... Everybody's just kind of like yelling back and forth at each other ideas.
Yeah.
Right.
But like every idea is building off of each other just by the sheer nature of how ideas spread.
That's the cool element, right? The course, over the course of the semester, we collaborated on and produced an album.
Oh, okay. Oh, I want to hear that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, basically each person made their own track on their own, and we shoved them all together. But there's some really cool elements as well. Like we wrote down all our dreams and compiled them into one mega dream, and then cut that into chunks as inspiration for each track.
Oh, cool.
That's like the coolest concept album ever.
Yeah, it was awesome. And someone did the art and created these unique cover arts for each person.
And has that album ever been released?
There's just for the class.
Oh man, all that human creativity.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, in engineering, right, there's things like that called hackathons, right? People group up into groups, and they sort of, come together over like how to solve a problem, how to get preschoolers to dispose of nuclear waste, and and they brainstorm all these ideas. And typically during a brainstorming session, there's a couple of rules, like all ideas are valuable, and like don't shoot down any other ideas, because that might keep other new unusual ideas from spawning. And even those unusual ideas could play a part in the end product. And then once you start going and prototyping they call it, is where you're like making the cardboard mock-up of it. And you just keep making a design until you have like a project that you can like present to the rest of the session.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting how you have all that collaboration in different groups like that.
Yeah. What's the coolest thing you ever saw at a makerspace?
I'm trying to remember all the things I've seen now. I remember you got an organ to play Africa's Toto.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was an automatic organ. I don't know if you ever saw that, Eric, but
No.
Man, they unfortunately they dismantled the organ this March because it was just taking up so much space. But it was basically a giant, probably the size of 3 or 4 refrigerators, organ all in one, and it was MIDI controlled. So I had a computer, I had a little Raspberry Pi running the MIDI notes from the organ console to the organ itself. And it was just open and close valves, and there's like a little fan that kept blowing air. And yeah, you could play all kinds of different music. It was pretty neat. It wasn't well maintained, so it was kind of like out of tune. But that gave it some character.
So you heard like Africa by Toto, but it sounded like it was coming from like a recorder.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to do something like that with harmonicas, with just like a fuck ton of harmonicas with different like different keys and stuff.
You gotta play like a song that everybody just goes, that song.
Never gonna give you
Definitely Continuum by Orgy Liggity.
Yes. Gosh, yes.
I did. Speaking of other cool things, I saw this wasn't at a makerspace, but one guy built a dragon out of like used like spoons and knives and like car doors.
I built a dragon.
Yeah, but this thing was like life size. This was like the size of like this was like a size of like a Humvee.
Wow.
There was one of those where I used to live in California that would be in all the parades, like junk metal like dragon that would like breathe fire and shit.
Yeah. We had this guy would show up at like Renaissance and it was like this giant metal dragon made out of like spare metal parts. And the cool thing about it too is like it'd spit fire.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Wait, Luke, we forgot to ask. What was the coolest thing you saw in a makerspace?
Oh, the coolest thing I saw in a makerspace. Well, I was the main proponent of the Raspberry Pi project because it used to be run by like this old like Windows XP machine, and it's like, okay, we need to open source this thing, and so I did. And open sourcing, by the way, is again a very valuable thing to the maker community. Is just to open contributions of software and hardware to projects in order to further innovation by your average maker, innovator, inventor. A lot of software has open source backgrounds.
That is a lovely, obscure answer to the question, what's the coolest thing you ever saw in a makerspace?
That is a really obscure answer. Yeah, you're right.
That's
the Luke answer.
Spoken like a true engineer.
Wow. Yeah, that was answering my own questions that I don't even ask.
I like that. I like how you're just considerate enough to like explain a thing that you're not sure if people know.
Yeah, and then I just go down a rabbit hole, and that's just part of being an engineer, I guess.
Actually, that's really interesting. I've actually wondered this in the past because there's this stereotype for engineers to be awkward and have difficulty communicating.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like the engineering mindset actually induces that state?
Yeah, to a certain extent. I don't know what comes first, the chicken or the egg, but yeah, there are very eloquent like professors. There are professors who will just sit there and look at the whiteboard and write math and expect you to know it. Of course, the good professors are the ones that can explain something to an average Joe. Like you don't really understand a subject until you can explain it to a 5-year-old.
That's
right?
Yeah.
what my grandpa always, like. I mean, one of the most like socially gifted people I ever knew was my grandpa, and he taught like graduate level electrical engineering.
Hmm.
And he just like he was the type of guy that you could have like a long social dinner for, and he'd just keep you entertained, and you feel like you're involved in the conversation.
Oh, that's really cool.
It depends on the person, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But like with my own limited experience tinkering, if I spend a whole day trying to work out some circuitry or like some other engineering project, I would find it especially more difficult to communicate with other people because to me it felt like a particular language where you have to be extremely precise about every minute little detail, and if there is something that isn't flushed out in your mind, you have to go in and flesh out every little detail of that sub element in order for the thing to work.
Right.
Whereas with like communication, like you, Richard, with marketing, you were talking about, maybe the broad strokes when you're trying to communicate the ideas. You don't need to go into every little detail. You're just trying to get the overall shape of it.
Engineering, I've met engineers who are like super precise in how they talk. Like my dad just talks like an engineer 24/7. And the way he'll talk to me often is that he'll begin to lecture me about some subject he finds interesting. And then there's other times I meet engineers that are like, yeah, I'm working on the thing. It's acting kind of wonky,
Mm-hmm.
You're like, what's wonky? I don't know. It's just being hinky. And you're like, Is that a technical term?
Yeah, thanks for explaining the engineering, how people communicate. Yeah, I'm not good at communicating, but yeah.
Engineers are both like precise. An engineer can be precise and imprecise
Yeah,
at the same time.
so case in point, me. Yeah, remember that email that you were like trying to help me write, and I was like being like so like formal and like, this is like an email to my hiring manager for my current job.
God, it was he was basically like sharing like the EdBoard Kickstarter link to a coworker, right?
Uh-huh.
And he wasn't sure if he should share it to this coworker and asked to share it with people that he works with. And he wrote it like the best way I could describe the writing is like a cover letter to a potential like you're like, if you have any questions, feel free to email me when you can.
Uh-huh.
And I guess me being trained the way I'm at, I'm like, dude, ask him how he is, ask him how his family, be like, hey, I'm doing this thing, check it out. I mean, is music, like, going back to the whole, like, technical thing, do you find music to be a very technical subject to communicate?
That's layers. Trevor, do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, depends on the context. Yeah. Well, again, yeah, I have to go back to the difference between like being in a conservatory, like classically trained environment versus like playing with like blues-based bands or rock bands and stuff, because it's a lot of the times like the simplest way to do something is just to demonstrate it, and kind of, because if you're trying to explain what to do, that's kind of just adding an extra step a lot of the time. But then if the person doesn't get it, and I have this problem with teaching lessons too, like if the person like doesn't get it, you have to kind of try different approaches to get them to understand what you're talking about, and figure out where that particular person will have the light bulb turn on their head.
Yeah, and I see your point, Richard, by asking that, because it's such a multifaceted thing that, yes, there's so many technical elements about it that you can describe, but that maybe going into the details of it isn't the most effective way to communicate in certain settings.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Which can make education a problem.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that, Trevor, have you noticed this when you're in a lesson, like you said, sometimes the easiest way to communicate an idea is just to play it for someone. And students have this innate ability to pick up on very subtle body cues and minute motions, and to recreate that immediately without any hassle.
Yeah, you have to be aware of if you're like below this certain threshold where it literally is just technique and like, right notes and right rhythms and right figuring and whatever. But after a certain point, like if you're trying to, tell someone how to play with like a certain feel that's either, a little behind the beat or ahead the beat or whatever in a certain way, that's really hard to do in any other way than just,
Right.
playing it
and
for them and
that's
them
not something
doing trial
like,
and error.
I teach programming, and yeah, I can just like, okay, press these keys, and I'm like, okay, semicolon at the end of every line, and this has to be wrapped in this shape of bracket. Like, I have to explain every single step or else the program doesn't run. But with music,
exactly.
like, you miss a note and the music still, has a sound at least.
Totally.
Yeah, some people like structure. Some people, if you like say, yeah, here's these like 4 or 5 chords, they'll like go crazy. And then some people would be like, I don't know what to do. Like this is like too much information, or like it's
they treat it like it's a computer program that they're trying to learn to write, but it's not.
Tell that to Milton Babbitt.
Yeah. Yeah, jazz is interesting because like I know when I'm improvising, like it's like you practice certain patterns, and then the improvisation part is fitting them together in different ways and kind of, modifying them each a little bit. Which I imagine it's a similar thing with like improv comedy type of stuff.
Half of improv comedy is just like reacting.
And then there's improv invention too.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an engineering thing?
Improv invention is a thing, and it's mostly brought on by the maker community. It differs from engineering where everything is like planned out to the T. But I mean, a lot of times in order to be able to plan everything out to the T, you have to sort of, do some outside the box thinking and, improvise on like little bits in order to build the big part, right?
Little bits. Yeah, totally. That's really cool. So we're getting about to my bedtime. Is there anything else anyone would like to say or ask?
Support EdBoard. We have our Kickstarter running up. Just go on Kickstarter.com, type in EdBoard, capital E, lowercase d, capital B, OARD. We're really close to hitting our goal, and every bit helps.
When's the Kickstarter end?
August 20th.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds really, really cool what y'all are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Like I said earlier, we haven't met a single person who's like,
Yeah.
So are you manufacturing on any like large scale at all right now, or is it just prototyping?
Prototyping at the
This
moment. I just laser cut 5 boards the other night with a shiny flat new laser cutter bed. As much as I like getting my hands dirty making stuff, it's definitely not sustainable to, if I want to like get a product out. We're looking at manufacturers we're trying to get international shipping up and going with these manufacturers in China. Some of our team members are Chinese and they're able to speak the language.
So, in non-engineer speak, we have a finalized-ish board design. We're in the process of getting it to be manufacturable ready and hope to get these boards out within the year. So if any of you parents out there are just people who are like, man, I wish I knew how my MacBook worked or my PC worked, get yourself an EdBoard and start learning about resistors and transistors, and
LEDs.
It's going to be a fun ride. LEDs, trust us, you're going to learn with it. We have the science to back it.
Awesome.
Right on.
Well, guys, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you here with us.
You too.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Trevor.
Yeah,